Hello and welcome to this episode of Defenders on Sunset TV, in which we will look at a unique military arrangement that India has had in place for the last 2 decades, since 2001, as one of the outcomes of the review that was carried out following the Kargil conflict, in which it was decided that India must integrate its services together, and therefore the Andaman and Nicobar Command of the Indian Armed Forces is an integrated service headquarters with forces of all 3 services playing a predominantly active role, with neither overshadowing the other, from aerial movement and reconnaissance to the strong foothold that the Navy has to look at the Malacca Straits and dominate any Chinese military activity that may not be agreeable to India, and of course the land forces that are in place for amphibious landings, military operations, and in the event of contingencies such as natural disasters, the manpower that the army can bring to play can be dramatically important for the island chain, which is at least 4 to 5 times bigger than the joint US and UK naval bases in Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean. So the strategic importance of the Andaman and Nicobar Command is phenomenally more than perhaps most of the other military engagements that anybody can hope to get into with another country in the Indian Ocean region. And to that extent, the Andaman and Nicobar Command is India's outpost into Southeast Asia, as also a military fortress, and it's called Fortran, that provides India the first point of contact for any shipping that goes from the Straits of Malacca towards India's larger seas and coastal region of the Indian subcontinent. In this episode on India's extended geostrategic military engagements, we have decided to look into the Andaman and Nicobar Command, which not only is a tri-services command, but has a number of responsibilities, from providing India the trump card kind of checkpoint towards China's maritime ambitions in the Indian Ocean and particularly around India's coastline, to also taking on large-scale humanitarian initiatives, particularly in the light of natural calamities like a cyclone. We have with us Lieutenant General Aditya Singh, a man I greatly respect, possibly one of the most capable and distinguished officers coming out of the Indian Army in recent memory. And we have General Asthana, who is taken his military understanding of matters to the strategic level and has now written close to 450 articles in a variety of journals explaining geostrategic to hands-on military issues. Welcome on the show, sir. And General Atti, sir, the first question is to you, obviously, because you've commanded the Andaman and Nicobar Command. And as you were mentioning to me, the day you walked in, you were faced with a humanitarian disaster of the level that collective losses of life in our wars since independence have not imposed on India. Some 3,000 odd lives were lost, and of course, enormous loss to property. So the question that emerges is that Andaman and Nicobar have always been seen, at least for the last 2 decades, as strategically very important. This kind of the tsunami that came, it must have destroyed a lot of your infrastructure that India relies on for its eyes into the Straits of Malacca and beyond. How quickly was it rebuilt, or are measures in place now to cater for such kind of adversity? And secondly, the area around Andaman and Nicobar itself gives India and India's toehold enormous proximity to Cocoa Islands in Burma, to the coast of some of the countries in Southeast Asia, about 80 kilometers away. And then you engage with Delhi all the time. So it is a kind of responsibility that few of us know about. Could you put the picture in perspective, sir?
Maroof, thank you very much, and for your very kind words of introduction. Before I answer your specific questions, I'd like to just clarify for the audience that the Andaman and Nicobar Command has some very special qualities. The first being that it is a 21st century command. It was raised on 8th of October 2001 and has completed 20 years. The second, and which you have alluded to, is that it's the only command in the 21st century which has faced a near warlike situation and come through successful. As I mentioned, 26th December 2004 was the tsunami, which was based on an earthquake off the coast of Sumatra. But the impact was felt immediately on the 750 kilometer long Andaman chain, and the islands tilted. So a lot of the coastline went underwater.
Wow.
And that is why there were huge deaths. For example, in an island like Kaushal, which had a population of 8,000, you lost 1,200 people immediately. So it was something tremendous. And because of the disruption and the geomorphological changes, all the jetties were destroyed. The entire coastline was submerged, so one couldn't even approach the islands. So it was not only a humanitarian crisis, it was a crisis of multiple agencies, of accessibility, of communication, because like all good islands all over the world, where do you stay? You'd like to be as close to the sea as possible and enjoy the view. And nobody had anticipated an earthquake of such a magnitude. And therefore, all the infrastructure, which was vital, went underground. But having been there in this combat situation made me realize a lot of other things. And that I've spoken about the unique function of this command. I gave you two aspects. But the most important function I see for this command is its role and contribution to what I see a growing and emerging India.
Right.
It's got a far greater, no other service command really can contribute to the growth of India in the manner that the Andaman Nicobar Command can.
I'll come to that, sir, because it was a question I was going to lead you on to hereafter.
But on the infrastructure point, question you asked, as I said, it was a warlike situation. We had to get the infrastructure from jetties, from buildings, from communications, from road supplies ready. And it was conducted in 3 phases. The first was the immediate rescue and then the immediate rehabilitation. We lost, as I said, 3,000 people and 60,000 out of a population of 3 lakh were, had no homes. This happened in December. The monsoons come in April. And so we had a warlike situation to construct 10,000 shelters in 9 islands, none of which had jetties, moving 15,000 tons of CGI sheet from Delhi. All that was achieved, and we got that basic infrastructure ready. The military infrastructure which was destroyed was also made ready. And within a year of the tsunami, We were militarily operational in 3 months, but completely ready within a year.
Wow.
And that is why I say it was the most satisfying year of my life, was because you were able to achieve what you had set out to do.
Absolutely, sir, absolutely. I've always wondered why you moved from there to Southern Command, but that's another story. General Asthana, sir, you've written extensively. You talked about, a recent piece of yours coming out about the Indo-Pacific strategic calculations that are being made. And in any calculation, if anybody was to look at it in terms of looking at the world map, what really strikes out is the Andaman and Nicobar Island and the strategic heft it provides to India by its very location, and also the fact that it is on the mouth of the Straits of Malacca. It is also a place where recently some US aircrafts, like a heavily armed military version of an aircraft which was recently sent in by the P-8 Poseidon aircraft, which was made to land in the Andamans in an extended runway. And other extended runways are also coming into play. So clearly the US sees this as a big move upwards from the Diego Garcia region, where the US from India's southernmost points is about 1800 miles away or more. Can you explain the importance of Andaman and Nicobar in the geostrategic calculations of the United States and now the Quad?
See, in geostrategic calculations, if you see the location of Andaman and Nicobar is something which will always dominate all the channels which are joining Indian Ocean and Pacific Ocean, whether it is Malacca Strait or it is 10-degree channel or it is 6-degree channel. And if you combine all the three, you find 80% of the global shipping passes through this region. Andaman Nicobar Command, can you imagine, is just 0.2% of Indian land, but has 30% of Indian EEZ.
I believe so.
So, therefore, China has been trying to somehow circumvent Malacca Strait, because the dependence of China on Malacca Strait is tremendous. 40% of its entire shipping and entire trade passes through that region. In fact, it is much more, but the 40% of energy is passing through this region. And therefore, China is trying all methods to somehow circumvent Malacca Strait, because he knows that that is the vulnerability where they had to look in, where unfriendly navies can create havoc for China and cut off its supply chain if a situation, adverse situation demands so. So now what China has been trying to do, and that is where the importance of Andaman Nicobar comes in. China tried to get into through China-Myanmar economic corridor into Bay of Bengal. But again, the Andaman Nicobar Command and Andaman Nicobar location is such that it dominates that maritime channel as well. Similarly, they also tried to make a Kra canal through Thailand, but that also is being dominated. Similarly, we are just about 100 odd kilometers from the area. Even if we goes to Lombok Strait or Sunda Strait, then also Andaman Nicobar Command comes into play. So therefore, irrespective of what China does, the Malacca Strait is important, Andaman Nicobar and Andaman Sea remains important. Also, let me tell you some figures. People keep saying that, okay, by CPEC, China has sorted out its Malacca dilemma, and by CMEC, it has sorted out its Malacca dilemma. That's not so. The cost of a per unit trade, if he flows through Malacca Strait, it comes out to $2.5, and if he passes it through CPEC or CMEC, it comes to $10. So, irrespective of what he does, Malacca Straits is crucial to China's economy and China's free flow of trade. Quickly. And therefore, I'll just finish my point. So, therefore, Malacca Strait, he would like to secure in some manner or the other, and that's why you would have seen a massive expansion of Chinese Navy in that context.
There has been talk also of, if faced with the Malacca dilemma, the Chinese Navy could go around the Southeast Asian countries and enter the South China Sea's waters from southern parts of the Southeast Asian bloc. Is that a possibility?
It is a possibility, but it imposes a heavy cost.
Okay.
Because what is happening is those two states which I talked about, Lombok state and Sunda state, are the ones from where he can do. So he will have to circumvent that area, and that is why then the cost increases because the distance increases.
Okay,
That's the
understood.
problem.
And the cost of constructing
Yeah.
the China-Pakistan economic corridor and the China-Myanmar corridor, as you brought out,
Yeah.
is 1:4. General Aditya Singh, sir, what I want to understand, we're talking of China, so maybe you can complete that part about China and say whatever else you want to, that there have been reports of Chinese submarines that were sighted in the waters around the Andamans, just as there were clear pictures available to us about Chinese submarines suddenly emerging at the outskirts of Colombo. So therefore, there is China, and China has always had more of a submarine force than an aircraft carrier force. They're trying to come up to the levels of India, if not the United States. But at this point of time, it is the submarine threat. I don't know what your appreciation of that would have been while you were there at ANC. And the other aspect is that the Air Force's role is extremely important also for extending your strategic reach. And I believe as part of Exercise Gagan Shakti, the Air Force had also carried out some activity in that area and beyond eastwards. Your view, sir?
Yeah. You've raised two issues. Now, the first point I want to make is that the Malacca Strait is so shallow that a submarine has to surface when crossing. And hence, therefore, you find that you can really record the movement of each and every ship, including submarine. The Sunda and the Lombok is there and they can go. But to say this, the fact is, the location of Andaman gives you a place from where you can carry out extended surveillance.
Yes.
And with the new kind of means available, surveillance, the reach for surveillance is what we need. And therefore, you talked of Sri Lanka. That is why we have talked of developing runways and the surveillance, and that is also a point about the Air Force. For example, when MH370 went down, you know, the Malaysian
I know, sir.
Andaman Nicobar Command was involved in the search
I
for
believe
that.
so.
So, to that extent, you know, not only the military aspect, when you talk of the Air Force reach and the strategy, it is the confidence building that Andaman Nicobar Command allows you with the littoral nations. You know, that is the only command, as I said, which has a transcontinental reach. You have the Milan exercises in which 22 navies participate. So, what it does, it allows you to interact with Myanmar, Thailand, Indonesia, Singapore, all these countries. And I don't know whether you're aware, but we had initiated training exercises for the Singapore Air Force in our land. We've transshipped guns to Myanmar, and on the way back, I told my Myanmari friends that we've heard that in Coco Islands, you got some wireless units. He said, sir, no problem. Your officers can go and see Coco Islands. There's nothing there. So that is the kind of reach. The point I want to make is India is a very big country. Andaman Nicobar, 1,200 kilometers away, looked like a vulnerable chain of islands. So there is a greater acceptability of the Andaman and Nicobar Islands and the military located there with the Southeast Asian nations.
Absolutely.
You know,
And
so
a comfort level exists.
So you are a bridge to Southeast Asia. And that's why I keep on saying that the Andaman Nicobar Command, as you're going in part of your Look East policy, the Andaman and Nicobar Command will play a greater role in the growth and in emerging India than any other military. It's got a role far greater than just military.
No, that's very true, sir. And in fact, the point also the general brought out about the EEZ, I'm familiar. I went there about a little more than 20 years ago. But that was one of the points that was explained to me by the Coast Guards also, that our responsibility actually here is a lot greater than other coastal areas because of the extended EEZ there. And that is the kind of riches, sadly, we haven't tapped enough into as a country, but that's a matter of another discussion. But I want to take you to a point that was raised recently by the current director of IDSA in an article in which he has talked about Andaman and Nicobar Islands become an important fulcrum of the strategic concept of the Indian Ocean and the Indo-Pacific. So there are of course, the US as part of LEMOA and SISMOA, they are providing us bases for logistics and other arrangements, and like one of the US aircrafts also touched in there. And we are also likely to get one in Djibouti. But in this part of the world where the Andamans and Nicobar are concerned, how much of a added benefit can India get from the presence of the US and others in and around those waters? As the General Aditya has just brought out, that we are pretty much up to speed with all our engagements there. So how much more? Is it going to become a case of overkill because the islands are available?
No, it's not a case of overkill, because this is a crucial choke point where Indian Ocean and Pacific Oceans are meeting.
Yes.
So therefore, when we talk in the Indo-Pacific context, this assumes importance because if you see today, the effectiveness of any navy in waters, whether it is South China Sea or anywhere else, when you are confronting some country which does not believe in the rule of law, or shall we say freedom of navigation and things like that, then what happens is you have to confront him at a point where he is weakest. And in that context, in South China Sea, the land-based aircraft of China can influence the battle there. So therefore, South China Sea, there is tremendous amount of posturing, but China has some advantage. As you move away from South China Sea and come near Malacca Strait and then thereafter Indian Ocean, the strength of Chinese reduces. With submarines, you cannot win a battle. So with submarines, certainly some amount of maritime domain awareness, etc., that you can achieve, but certainly you cannot influence. Now, in that context, whether it is United States, we will certainly get a lot of help from United States in terms of the intelligence, also in terms of shall we say, domination of all these choke points. Because if you see the distribution between, if we have to distribute between, let's say, us and Quad, or between us and Australia, the Sunda and Lombok Strait will be better dominated by Australian bases. We have a LEMOA with Australia as well. So, and the Malacca Strait will be better dominated by us. And if we make a distribution of responsibilities, let's say hypothetically, then perhaps the Japanese Navy, the US Navy, as well as the Australian Navy will be more effective in the portion of South China Sea and these areas, and Indian Navy and perhaps the French Navy can also pitch in Indian Ocean. We will be able to better look after the Indian Ocean. So therefore, a synergy is required, and this is a fulcrum of that synergy.
Okay. Very well put. So my last question to you, Sir General Aditya, sir, and that is that the Chinese are also building up certain additional infrastructure in the littoral areas around the Andaman Nicobar Island. They're probably going to be looking for some island space which India cannot, or geographically doesn't claim, and build up on that. Now, the issue is that, do you look at your role in the Andaman and Nicobar Island as a defensive role or an offensive defensive role?
You know, I clarified to say that it's a 21st century command, and you have to think of the nature of conflict and the threats in a 21st century manner. So let us forget defense, offense. It is a projection of India's power. And I'll give you a simple example. And in 1898, that's 125 years ago, Admiral Mahan said that in the 21st century, the center of the world will be the Indian Ocean. Now, that's the point I wish to make. Diego Garcia, which you mentioned in the beginning, is 6,000 acres. It's an average height of 4 feet. The highest point on that island is 22 feet. It has 15 military establishments. In Andaman and Nicobar Command, you have the luxury of 20 Diego Garcias. Now, when you talk about how do we deal, as I said, in the 21st century, strategic power is all a matter of alliances. No country can be superior. You cannot match the capacity of China. And hence, all these organizations such as AUKUS, Quad, will evolve over time. And in that context, Andaman and Nicobar Command, which is called an Emerald Isle, I call them emerald set in gold for the future.
Very well put, sir.
And that is the kind of role they will play. You don't know what's going to happen. And therefore, you have to look ahead and build up. Now, we may not have any military pacts, but given how does one know how the world will change? And the most important is, as I said, this is a bridge to Southeast Asia. You make your friends of these littorals. They also want friendship. They don't want to be dominated. Look at Vietnam.
Yes. In fact, when the Andaman Nicobar Command was set up, nobody knew that a term like Indo-Pacific will come into play or Quad will come into play. So it's all, as you said, it's all developing, and strategically, I think you've rightly brought out, both of you, General Officers, sir, that we need to look ahead. We need to understand in more greater detail the benefits that nature and geography have given us, which we are yet to exploit to its fullest. But thank you very much for your wisdom, and thanks for watching. Until our next episode, goodbye.